I want, quote unquote, an easier fight for Derek's last one. I almost wanted to see Chisora sail up into the sunset and fight a Francis Ngannou or maybe a Dillian White, not a young killer, if you like, in Daniel Dubois. It's perfect for everyone. He brings a lot of new eyeballs onto the sport, and it's not just losing Fury, you almost feel like we've lost Joshua as well. Daniel Dubois isn't that character.
I think it was a terrible decision to tell him to roll the dice then.
Could AJ beat him? Yeah, of course, but Parker, you'd have to be the biggest AJ fan in the world, like me and Spence. Parker has to start favourite in that fight.
You can't say that Liam Cameron's not going to start the favourite in this one, going off that last performance.
It almost looks like an egg that's just been cracked and you can't put it back together. Yeah.
Welcome to episode 114 of Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. We're joined today by the doyen of DAZN, apparently Turkey Al Sheikh's favourite presenter.
Sometimes.
Ade Oladipo. Yeah. You're here by royal assent, I can assume.
I am. The red carpet was rolled out as we were sitting.
Nice to see you, boys. Nice to see you, boys. Attention on the subject, please. Right. A little bit more movement in the heavyweight division. We are seeing some noises being made about Derek Chisora. He's now in the mandatory position of the IBF. What do you make to that?
Look, in terms of sort of rulings and rankings, it's fair. It's fair. Whether or not we think he's ready for a world title fight against Daniel Dubois, I guess, is a different conversation. But the reason he is there is because Martin Bakole versus F.A. Jagba was supposed to be the #1 contender fight. Martin Bakole then decided to fight Joseph Parker, therefore almost by default relinquishing his position as the IBF #1. Chisora was #2. He's been pushed up. And with Chisora, look, we like to goad Chisora, don't we? We like to dig at him because we know the end should have been a couple of years ago and the end is closer. But coming off wins against Otto Volin and Joe Joyce, he is beating people. He's beating credible fighters. So, look, I think I wouldn't want to see it, but I respect that he's now pushed himself in that position.
Why wouldn't you want to see it?
I just don't think
As
Chisora...
a spectacle, you don't want it for Derek?
No.
You don't want it for Derek?
No. I want, quote unquote, an easier fight for Derek's last one. I wanted an easier fight 3 years ago, Simon. So I definitely don't want him to go in there with the form heavyweight right now in a young Daniel Dubois. I know they've got history. Obviously, Don Charles is the connection. But I almost wanted to see Chisora sail up into the sunset and fight a Francis Ngannou or maybe a Dillian White, not a young killer, if you like, in Daniel Dubois.
I think it's fair to say, though, that Chisora has backed up his argument as in not to retire, because I was one of those calling for him. I was saying, listen, I know him well, and after, I think it was the Joseph Parker defeat a few years ago now, I said to him, listen, mate, you went out on your shield. It's now time to hang up your gloves. He said, did you enjoy it? I went, loved it. He went, was you entertained? I said, yeah. And you was doing well in the fight. And he said, well, there's your answer. You've answered that. Until that doesn't happen. And he's come good recently. You know, you saw the Joe Joyce fight. So he's got himself into that mandatory position, spoke to him on Saturday, and he says, listen, mate, I'm sitting out waiting for my shot now. If anyone deserves an opportunity, and he's proved us wrong now for the last couple of years.
Sorry, there'll never be a full stop for him, though. I mean, he got this opportunity when he got the Tyson Fury fight. World title fight, stadium. It's exactly what he's saying he wants now. He's already had it. So I'm like, well,
he's earned the right to be there again. No, that's the argument.
And then it'll start again.
Boys, rather than ruminate, let's hear what Derek Chisora had himself to say on Fight Night the other day.
I'm not calling anybody out. I won my world title shot with Daniel at Wembley. I know I can sell out Wembley. I know Daniel pulled out the fight with Joseph Parker. He didn't come out and apologize. But you know what? He's learning. You know, he's a good fighter. You know, he's just learning his craft right now. So, you know, people give him a slack. He'll defend his title with me, because I know Joseph Parker wants to fight for the WBO with Alexander Usyk. So, listen, I want that fight.
Listen, Derek, the heavyweight landscape right now, there's so many big fights out there. You've earned your right, by the way, to be there. You're on a run of some good form. You're #2 with the IBF, now being made mandatory challenger. If Dubois decides, or Alexander Usyk decides to go in against, let's say, Daniel Dubois, where does that leave yourself as in the next big name? Where are you looking to go if that fight doesn't materialise?
Listen, if that fight happens, I'll just wait for my opportunity. Because either way, listen, we want good fights. We want good business. And right now, good business is me and Daniel. Yeah? And then Joseph Parker and Alexander Usyk. But Usyk and Daniel Dubois will not sell out Tottenham or Wembley. I know that for a fact. Do you believe that will sell out?
No, not necessarily. So what you're saying is your next fight, if you have to be patient for it, will be a world title challenge.
Especially now they made me say yes, 100%. So I went for it.
Let's unpick some of the things that he said, right? First one, do you think that Dubois versus Chisora sells out Wembley Stadium?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah.
I do as well.
Well, when we say sell out,
I just think that Derek has become a bit of a fan favourite, if I'm totally honest. And I think that him versus Daniel Dubois, who's growing as well. You've got two Brits there, world title on the line. I think it sells. Listen, they're gonna put a strong undercard on there as well. Let's have it right. It's not just going to be that. But I think it's a more sellable fight than some of the fights that are being offered.
Well, the reason why I ask is because we've seen Derek go in against Fury, and it was a 12-round beatdown, wasn't it? It wasn't a competitive fight.
Well,
Fury won it at a canter. We're now talking about Dubois being the most destructive heavyweight in the division, the form fighter. Do you really think that people are going to look at this and go, well, it's a match that's going to produce some jeopardy? We know that Derek goes into fights and he always leaves everything in the ring, and we know there's honesty, and we all know what we pay for what we get with Derek Chisora, win, lose or draw. Right? But to sell out Wembley Stadium is no tall order. And you're both saying, unequivocally, you think that Chisora versus Dubois, the undercard can't carry it, the headline carries it,
absolutely.
Right? The undercard helps it, right? Are you both seriously saying that you think that sells out? Because I'm sort of doubtful that it does, but I'm happy to go with you guys if you think it does.
I think definitely that it does. I believe that it warrants it and does do it. And I think that, you know, with Derek, he's that old warhorse, man, that you go like, there's still question marks over Daniel. People will still raise them question marks over, you know, his heart desire as the fight wears on, gets late. Chisora is the guy that could take him there. It's an interesting fight.
Yeah, it is.
You can't make that argument.
I'm not making an argument for beating him. Don't get me wrong.
You cannot make the argument about Daniel Dubois anymore. After the Hrgovic fight,
I'm not.
And after the demolition of Anthony Joshua, you can't make that argument.
I'm not, but what I'm saying is there are people out there that will go, be interesting to see Derek take him into those penultimate rounds, 10, 11, 12,
there is
if he can get there.
a style that Chisora has that I wouldn't mind seeing against Dubois.
Absolutely.
Obviously, look, would I prefer that to see that style several years ago? Yes, but Dubois on the front foot is completely different from Dubois on the back foot. And Chisora can push him back. Whether or not Chisora can take that punch power is a whole different discussion.
Do you think Derek is right, because I think he is, to question, and I know that Eddie Hearn doesn't agree with me, and I'm probably sure that Frank won't agree with me, but do you think that Dubois versus Usyk sells out Wembley Stadium? Because we don't, do we?
I don't know.
We think it needs a sort of Joshua Parker undercard that will really fill the stadium out, because Joshua is still the golden goose that lays all the eggs, irrespective of whether the best fighter in the world is Usyk.
I almost feel like, and the answer probably is no, it doesn't sell out Wembley, but I do feel like we need to kind of put a lot of stock into what Usyk has done over the last few years. And because a lot of his fights have been, or the last couple of fights have been in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, I don't know if we know the star power he is over here yet. But every time he's been over here, though, he's done incredible numbers. I know the dance partners have been AJ, the dance partner was Tony Bellew, the dance partners have been... But I do feel like his stock has risen so much that even if it doesn't sell out Wembley, I still think they can get 70,000 bums on seats in there. And that's kind of all you need. You don't need to max it in 90. You just need to get it past a certain number where it looks busy. And then, as you said, an undercard, a good undercard, and I do think it can get
extra bums on seats.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any possibility? I mean, I think we both think that the fight that's going to get made is Dubois-Usyk.
Yeah.
Right. So we're ruminating and creating content and subject matter to discuss. But do you think there's any possibility that Frank would make the Chisora versus Usyk fight, or Chisora versus Dubois fight, rather than Usyk versus Dubois?
I think it really depends on how much the WBO push their situation with Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker is the WBO mandatory. I honestly think we could have a situation where Joseph Parker fights Alexander Usyk and Daniel Dubois fights Derek Chisora.
You do?
I really do, because I think...
But didn't we just all just say that we thought the fight was going to be Dubois versus Usyk?
I did, but boxing has a weird way of sort of throwing you one way and then going a completely different direction. And the WBO are not setting on the fact that they're going to allow Usyk to do what he wants to do. They're the only ones that seem to want to enforce their mandatory situation.
Yeah, I think that hasn't that changed just recently though, with the WBO now you know, allowing Usyk to maybe defend that title and not strip him if he decides to go in against Daniel Dubois. They won't strip him of that WBO title and allow Joseph Parker to fight whoever it would be. We've been talking about Joseph Parker, Anthony Joshua, those possibilities. But I think the WBO now have taken the stance to allow Usyk that little bit of freedom.
Okay, if that is the case, I absolutely despise it. I almost feel like there needs to be a situation where mandatories are enforced, regardless of what we want to see.
I'm with you.
But I don't need to see an undisputed title fight between Dubois and Usyk because Usyk's had his undisputed already.
Yep.
Now we're just talking bonus time for Alexander Usyk.
Yep.
People that deserve their title shots should get their title shots.
Absolutely right. Which is the argument that's being made as a result of the Saudis and what they think is the pathway, whether it be of Dana White and whatever else. One person that does sell out stadiums and has sold out stadiums is Tyson Fury. Now, whilst I'm very happy to hold him to his word, right, which is retired, and not indulge this game of that Fury wants to play with everybody and everyone gets massively interested, do you think boxing at this moment in time misses Fury? I mean, I've always been a massive fan of Tyson's. I was tipping him to beat Usyk in the rematch. I was wrong there. I have disliked some of the things that have come out of his mouth, and I resent the idea that just because he's got bipolarity, that we all have to consider his rudeness and uncouth mouth as something we all have to give a pass to. But I understand that perhaps that is the reality of it. But do you think boxing and heavyweight boxing misses Tyson Fury?
Oh, I think definitely he's a huge character. You can't deny that, and I think that boxing does miss him. I think that he brings a lot of value to the heavyweight division right now. You know, he's good. He's very charismatic outside of the ring, and he's still one of the top fighters inside of the ring. And I think when you lose a figure like that in a modern era, a modern generation, it's always a loss. You can't say it's not going to be, for sure.
Yeah, it is. There aren't that many characters in the sport of boxing, let alone in the heavyweight division. There just aren't. He was that. He was very, as you say, controversial sometimes outside the ring, sometimes controversial inside the ring.
And funny and witty and clever.
And funny
and sometimes
and witty.
not. Yeah.
And I've interviewed a lot of the top heavyweights, and trust me, I'm fighting to get a word out of them. I just give him the mic and he just goes.
He goes, yeah.
And it's perfect. It's perfect for everyone. He brings a lot of new eyeballs onto the sport. And it's not just losing Fury. You almost feel like we've lost Joshua as well. So you've lost the two biggest characters this country have had, or two biggest boxers in a decade. And it almost feels like they've gone at the same time, and the baton hasn't been passed to someone that we think is going to carry it for the next decade. Because Daniel Dubois isn't that character.
No.
In the ring, he might deliver, but he's not that character, which is why we're almost trying to force Moses the Talma to be that guy, because we're looking for that next star. So I hope there is a couple more fights in there for Fury and AJ, just as we wait for Moses to kind of play catch-up.
Well, I think that's unfair on people like Fabio Wardley, because I think Fabio's
different
got
characters.
I know they are, but he's got a personality.
He is, but he's not as
things to say for
controversial as a Fury.
No,
I think he speaks very well, though.
Oh, he speaks
very well.
fantastic.
What I'm saying is,
my point was not that he speaks better than Tyson Fury. My point was that you went from Fury to a Toma with nothing in between. And I think Wardley has the personality and the capability in the ring to be something significant.
That's interesting. Your second point, whether or not, so you believe that Wardley could go on to win a world title.
I think he can
at least compete.
I think he can go on to knock on the door.
Yeah, I think he can knock on the door as well.
You can't deny that. He's like WBA number one, isn't he? You talk about like Pulev, who's the regular champion, and you put Wardley in against Pulev. He beats Pulev, he becomes that regular, and he puts himself in that position once those top tier heavyweights.
He's almost the dark horse from the outside
are
that we
falling
didn't
off now, aren't
expect
they?
to get there. Yeah.
But yeah, Wardley is. I think he definitely has the capability of winning a world heavyweight title.
I want to go back to Joshua for a moment. And obviously in shock-breaking news that took my breath away, you're forecasting that Joshua can beat Fury. But before we listen to you, let's listen to Paul Smith, who was on last week's show talking about Joshua.
It's easy saying it from our perspective. We're not inside. We don't see how it is. But what I did see and what I did hear on fight night when he lost to Dubois was bad advice from the corner. Now, Ben Davison is a good lad. He's a good trainer. Yeah. He takes the credit, and he's come out recently and he's took the criticism. And he's admitted that the corner work was really bad and maybe the preparation, I'm not sure what happens in the gym. But to tell Anthony Joshua to go for it when Dubois is still very much live in the fight, where 3 or 4 rounds, it's a different opponent. It's a different job in front of you. It's a different task. But you tell him to roll the dice when he's already been hurt, he's already been dropped, he's
just recovering, he's just getting himself back into it a little bit.
Just bluff your way through the fight for the next 2 or 3 rounds. Let Dubois tire himself out, because he's fighting on nerves ultimately, Dubois, in my opinion. And then you've got a better chance. I think he needs to change the team around him. I think he needs to get a good trainer around him.
I'm going to read you what Ben Davison said on social media for those that haven't seen it, if you guys haven't heard it, in response to what Paul Smith said last week. I never said the corner work was bad, and I stand on my opinion that we had to take a chance. After being down in rounds 1, 3 and again in the 4th, while trying to weather the storm that clearly wasn't working. And on top of that, Dubois' performance against Miller and Hrgovic suggested anything but for him to start to fade, and those guys managed to get more done to take it out of him, we had after a torrid start. So Ben's pushing right back at the idea that what Paul Smith said, I think what Shane McGuigan said, and what a lot of people have said, the roll the dice comment. Yeah. I think you're quite strong on the Ben Davison contribution to the outcome in this fight.
Yeah, I think it was a terrible decision to tell him to roll the dice then because of, you're looking at the performances from Daniel Dubois against Miller and Hrgovic. You go, Anthony, you've got to know your own guy. And Anthony Joshua, I know the guy very, very well, as he does. Anthony Joshua, when he gets hurt, and it was like that when you go back, even way back when he boxed Vladimir Klitschko, and he got tagged, it takes him 3 or 4 rounds to get back to his best.
So should he change his team then?
No, hold on. This is what I'm saying. I'm just talking about his decision was a terrible decision to tell him to roll the dice. Yeah. Anthony takes that time, and he should have been allowed to. But on the flip side, saying, should he change his team because of it? I say, no, Ben made a bad decision, but so I said, no, he doesn't need to change his team now. I think Ben's done a great job with him also. You got to look at that and look at what he's done with him. But the comments he made there,
where are you on a pushback for Ben
with.
Davison? I mean, surely the fighter's got to take some responsibility himself for knowing what he can and can't do.
Yeah.
But you box to instructions, Simon.
You do, but AJ's an experienced pro now. AJ's not a young kid coming through. And AJ knows himself as well. And AJ knows the danger in front of him, right? I mean, he's right there with Dubois, so he can hear the deep breaths. He can know if Dubois is tiring. He can know what to do. Look, Ben got it wrong. He got it wrong. He got lost in the moment. We've seen trainers do it. Tunde Ajayi got a lot of stick when he told Anthony Yarde to roll the dice in round 9 against Kovalev. And Ben shouldn't have said that to AJ. Ben should have basically said, look, you need to stay on your jab, stay on the back foot. When you're in close with him, clinch him, put your size on him. We saw nothing of that from AJ. So Ben got it wrong. With regards, should he change the team? I don't think so. I think I'm tired of AJ switching up
wasn't
teams.
This the moment? I mean, we've listened to everybody. I'm not trying to get Ben Davison out of a job, by the way. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate for the purpose of this, right? You've got 4 fights that everyone turned around and said had all been the redemption of Anthony Joshua. I debated that and didn't think it was, and felt that if he got one landed on his whiskers, he was going to have a problem. And so it duly transpired to be. This is the moment when Ben Davison had to shine, had to make the right decisions, when all the pressure is on the fighter against a real live fighter. Not Jermaine Franklin, who's a decent fighter, but not Daniel Dubois. Not Robert Helenius, who got blasted out by Deontay Wilder. Not Otto Wallin, who came to survive. And not Ngannou, who was an inexperienced MMA fighter that should have been dealt with by Fury. This was it.
But he wasn't, though. That was a point.
Say again?
But he wasn't dealt with by Fury. He pushed Fury all the way. So going into that one, AJ...
Right. AJ did his job.
So he's done the job. You can't take that away.
If we're now looking at that in isolation and saying, well, this is the moment. This is where Ben Davison. So the fighter doesn't start the way you anticipate he would start the fight. AJ didn't look
Simon,
right
AJ has to take responsibility as well. And boxing is the only sport where we seem to almost sort of put all that pressure on the trainer. In other sports, footballers have to take responsibility when they're on the pitch.
Manager cops it all the time.
Every time.
Of course they do.
But players have to take responsibility as well. Players have to take responsibility. AJ's an experienced former unified heavyweight champion of the world. He has to take experience against a lesser experienced pro in Daniel Dubois. So, I don't know, man. You can send a fighter out there with all the instructions in the world. Sometimes it's up to the fighter to make those adjustments.
But you don't send him out with a particular instruction.
But the fighter has that belief in his trainer, though, that if the trainer says something and you're in that moment, you react to that and you will do that. And so him saying there, now you need to go for it, AJ in his own head now is thinking, right, when I see that opportunity, and he make a fundamental mistake.
Okay, then you saying that one, would you like to see AJ switch trainers?
I like to see AJ switch trainers. I'll tell you who's the trainer he should switch to. Is Don Charles. Don Charles known him since he was an amateur, knows him inside out, and more importantly, with AJ, it's all here. And Don Charles knows him inside out, and he would be a great addition to Anthony Joshua. So the answer is, yeah, if he switched trainers, Don Charles is the guy.
The trainer I've always said that AJ should have been with from the very get-go, that AJ was with for one camp, was Robert Garcia. And I still to this day don't know why AJ left him. I thought AJ in that second fight against Usyk was the best performance. He still lost the fight, but I thought it was the best performance we've seen AJ in a long time.
If Anthony is matched against Parker, as people suggest may be the case, if the WBA is stripped away from Usyk and Parker's given it, which he's earned, by the way, as the interim champion, and they make the Joshua fight, does Joshua go into that fight as favourite?
No. Favourite? No. No. It's close, but Parker, I go on what have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
And Joseph Parker's done some good work lately. We talk about training matchups. Joseph Parker and Andy Lee are like that now.
Yep.
They're in sync and they're only getting stronger and better. So look, could AJ beat him? Yeah, of course. But Parker, you'd have to be the biggest AJ fan in the world, like me and Spence. To get on that. Parker has to start favourite in that fight.
Yeah, can I have my say on this?
Yeah, go on.
AJ was starting overwhelming. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Parker would, wouldn't he? Parker would.
Absolutely. Parker, you got to go on recent form,
Yeah.
and Andy Lee, you know, he's been a great addition and he's built him very, very well. And that fight was a long time ago, 2019. Since moving forward now, you look at it and you go, Parker would start the favourite for sure.
And it's how Parker's recovered from losses as well. We all thought he was done and done with the Joe Joyce fight. Yeah. Look what he's done since then. 5 wins.
I mean, he will maintain for that fight he wasn't fit, wasn't well on the evening, wasn't it? So we didn't get a fair representation of him. If AJ were to beat Parker for the WBA, if it manifests itself that way, Fury will come out of retirement, won't he?
100%. 100%. And then we get behind it. Like already now, AJ Fury gets made today. It's the biggest fight in British boxing history. I still put that on it. But if AJ were to win a big one, everyone then gets behind it and it does record-breaking numbers.
I think it brings Fury out of retirement quicker than maybe he's.
So you don't think he's retired, do you?
I don't think he'll retire. No, I think we'll see Fury in the ring again. I do.
But if he were to lose to Parker,
away, but I think we see him.
But if he were to lose to Parker, that would be the Fury fight gone, right?
I think so. Yeah.
We will see. Time will tell. Okay, let's take it down a division, literally, to the light heavyweights, or 2 divisions, because the cruiserweights are in between, don't they? We've been spoilt with 2 great fights between Beterbiev and Bivol. We know the results. We've got one in Beterbiev, we've got one in Bivol. I think Bivol's performance in the last fight was so superior to anything I'd seen previously in terms of, you know, what Beterbiev was encountering. But are you guys desperate to see the trilogy, or are you happy that they've got one each? Do you want to see the third fight because it's a rubber match?
I definitely want to see the third fight. I think that when you look through history of trilogies, and Gatti Ward comes to mind, Barrera Morales, Riddick Bowe, Vander Holyfield, you look at those trilogies and you go, that warrants it, man. That second fight, I'm with you, Simon, as a purist, and you're just watching the fight unfold the way that it did, and the performance from Bivol and Beterbiev in the first one and all that, you go, definitely want to see the third one, because it's one of those ones that we still don't know. It's the rubber match. We still don't know who's going to win that fight. That warrants it, man. Like, when you look at the light heavyweight division, who else would you want to see any of them 2 in with?
Well, Benavidez is there, isn't he?
Yeah.
Benavidez is there right now, and he's coming off a really good win against Davor Morel. The thing with trilogies is they don't always have to happen back to back to back.
Yeah.
Most of the trilogies you just mentioned there's always another one in between. The problem is, because of Beterbiev's age, you need to do it now.
Yeah, definitely.
Before he gets too old, and then it's pointless. And I agree with Simon. I actually felt that Bivol looked exceptional in that last fight, to the point where I'm so confident Bivol would beat Beterbiev again. I thought the last couple of rounds were the first time I looked at Beterbiev and said, okay, you are 40. It was the last couple of rounds, but he deserves it. It's one apiece.
Yeah.
If it's one apiece between 2 of the best light heavyweights, and they've shared 24 rounds, and you could argue and say it's 13, 11, 12. It's that close. It's that close.
I mean, the argument raged, didn't it? I think we both picked Beterbiev to win the first fight and stayed with the fact that he won it, despite the fact a lot of people think that Bivol won it. In the second fight, despite the fact that Beterbiev came out faster, Bivol went up through the gears and kept on going through the gears, and it became to a point where Beterbiev couldn't go with him, couldn't keep with him, and there was clear daylight between the 2 of them, in my view. I mean, are we in a situation where we think that, given what we've seen from Bivol now, and the motivation was extreme, but the motivation will be extreme again because this will be the rubber match, that Beterbiev is going to be able to dig deep enough and have the ability to be able to bridge that gap, which we've now seen clearly exhibited. We saw stylistically that Bivol is a better technical boxer than Beterbiev, but we just saw something in the second fight that I didn't think I was going to see, which is Bivol just go up a level and keep on going up a level, and then Beterbiev not being able to go with him.
Yeah,
if we've seen that clear daylight, how is Beterbiev going to bridge it
to
make the third fight compelling?
Bivol had to make those adjustments, and you know, boxing's all about being able to adapt. And Bivol losing that first fight went and he made those adjustments, and he made those, adaptability, and he proved that he could do that. Well, Beterbiev is now coming off his first loss, and the big question is whether he can adapt and do that. I believe that he can, because he's not just that wrecking machine. If you look at what he does, there's a lot of thought process about what he does. He sets traps, even though he's very, very aggressive, he's very good at what he does. So I think he can adapt again, and that's why we have to see the third one.
The thing is, though, with Beterbiev's previous 20 plus fights, he's knocked everyone out.
Yeah.
So I think even for him, it's like psychologically, how do you get away from the fact that I can't hurt Bivol? He can't seem to trap Bivol and hurt him like he's done everyone else prior to that. Whereas Bivol's game plan isn't to hurt fighters, it's almost to outbox, as you know, and embarrass them.
Yeah.
So Bivol's game plan has worked, but Turbiev's hasn't. I as much as I do want to see the trilogy, if I had to pick one, I'd rather see it go in a new direction and get Benavidez in there.
Well, if you get Benavidez in there, the problem we've got with getting Benavidez in there is that it's likely that he could be either one or either of those. Then we don't get the trilogy.
Then we don't get it.
Then we don't get it. Yeah, but what I'm saying is it warrants the trilogy.
Because it was one of
Because Benavidez is still there, he's young, he's rusty, and he will carry the torch from these two because the guy's that good.
Okay, but in terms of eyeballs, if you had 100 people watching, which one would they choose to watch? Bivol, Benavidez, because you haven't seen it, or something you've already seen for 24 rounds?
Well, I think that, do you know the problem we've got with the three names that we've mentioned there? The problem that we have is they're three of the best fighters pound for pound in the world, but they are for your boxing hardcore fans. The casual, really, they go, so I think you're talking about small margins.
Again, as we said earlier on the show, we had Paul Smith on the show last week talking about his brother Callum Smith, obviously after that victory against BOXING. Let's hear again what Paul had to say about the options for Callum.
If you fight Benavidez, the pair of you are interim champion. One of you are giving a lot up for not really much. It's mixed rewards, isn't it?
Yeah.
You both got an interim belt, which means you're next in line to fight the main ones. Yeah. But if you both fight each other, one of you is going to lose out.
Absolutely.
Unless it's something
Unless it's life, but they both want to be world champion. You're not going to be world champion by fighting each other, in my opinion.
So would you be advocating for him to fight for the cruiserweight?
No, I stay at light heavyweight. If whatever happens with the main two happens next, whether Bivol fights against Beterbiev again, which I can't see, he's going to have to fight his mandatories, whether he keeps them belts or whether that belt then gets upgraded to a full world champion, then you can defend that title. Yeah. And then maybe go for Badijak. But if he becomes a full world champion off the back of the Boati fight, then like I said before about Dubois, you couldn't really argue him as being a world champion after that win. The same with Dubois beating AJ for that belt. It was a worthy win of a world title. Then you could go up to cruiserweight and maybe fight Badijak. But it's a great position to be in.
Absolutely. So do you boys agree? I mean, we've got Badijak, who's the champion in recess almost, isn't he, inside the cruiserweight. Do you agree that Callum shouldn't be going for Badijak at this moment in time, given the fact that his main motivation in life is to be a two-weight world champion? Are you with Paul that he should stick in the light heavies?
He's put himself in a good position as a WBO interim champion. It's interesting to see what happens with these two at the top, Beterbiev and Bivol, and what happens with the titles, and then they fragment.
But they must also be caught by the same sort of jurisdiction everyone else is caught with. Ultimately, if you've got a situation where you've got Dubois Usyk having to give up a belt, someone's going to come knocking on Beterbiev and Bivol's door saying you have to give up a belt, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So I think that if you're the WBO interim right now, sit it out, and I think that Benavidez is a WBA regular champion as well, and you go, so there's big fights to be made there, but I think that for Callum Smith and where he's at right now, I wouldn't worry about the jump up to cruiserweight. Not saying that he couldn't beat Badijak at this stage at cruiserweight, but I just think that the opportunity will come at light heavy.
I like Paul, but the only thing I'll disagree with him, and it makes sense from what he's standing, but Benavidez should fight Callum Smith.
Yeah.
That's really what should happen. If Bivol's going to fight Beterbiev for the trilogy, you're left with, I think, third and fourth.
That's the fight.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then 100% you fight the winner. No, even if
why
it
does
is
Callum want that?
Because Callum's WBO interim and Benavidez is the WBA regular, so the belts are still going to be on the line.
Are they going to? But they're going to fight for interim belts, not world title belts.
No, but WBA regular is effectively an interim, isn't it? Because you've got your super now, WBA confusing things or whatever.
I want to chuck Anthony Yarde into the mix. He came on the show last week talking about his fight with Lyndon Arthur. I mean, I have to say, I'm not hugely enamoured with this fight. I like Anthony Yarde a lot on every level as a fella and as a fighter. And I also like Lyndon Arthur. I think he gets sometimes not quite the recognition for some of the fights he's been in. But we've seen this one before.
Yeah.
And in the second fight, we saw Anthony Yarde turn up. The first fight, I don't think he did, with all due respect to Lyndon Arthur. I mean, Anthony has got to do a real job on this one, hasn't he? And blast him out.
100%.
With no disrespect to Lyndon.
No, of course not. We were just speaking about trilogies, and this is a trilogy that no one asked for. Like, no one was screaming for Yarde versus Arthur because, again, we were all at the copper box where Yarde really did turn it up on Lyndon Arthur and showed that there's 1,000 levels between the two. So no one's really asking for that. Lyndon's done some good work. I thought the Dimitri Bivol fight performance, in hindsight, doesn't look like a bad one, considering what Dimitri Bivol has gone on to do. But I'm ready for Yarde to go. And I've been screaming, just because I can see it in Yarde. with all due respect, he's lost to Kovalev and Beterbiev.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Let's see.
And he had an opportunity in the
Lindens,
Kovalev fight, didn't he?
He had an opportunity in the Kovalev fight, and the Beterbiev fight was British Fight of the Year. So I just want to see him go. And I want to see the Boatsy fight desperately, or the Callum Smith fight now. So let's see what he does. I think I'm with you. He needs to look really, really good. Because I'm a big fan of Yarde as well. I know him personally, but admittedly, he looked really poor in his last fight.
Yeah. He did.
He looked really poor.
That's levels, though.
And
fighters drop to that level. When you get to that stage, you're unmotivated, and he just looked like he was going through the motions. I didn't read too much into that.
You can't be unmotivated in the division that has Bivol, Beterbiev, Boatsy, Smith, Benavidez,
But when you
Morel.
box someone that's far less ability to what
you do a number
got yourself.
Then, don't you?
No, sometimes
But
you don't. It doesn't work like
You've
that.
got all the background noise about.
I know what you're saying,
We had Tundi in
but
the
it
studio.
doesn't work like
we had
that.
Tundi in the studio saying he'll fight anyone anywhere, right? He's not worried about anyone, and he'll beat everybody. Besides, obviously, the fighters like Beterbiev and Bivol that he's already had challenges with Beterbiev. Anyway, rather than us ramble on, I had a word with him last week in the studio. Let's have a listen to what Anthony said to me last week when he was on.
The way I see it is we tried to get the Joshua Boatsy fight and we tried to get the Callum Smith fight. They chose to fight each other. Callum Smith said in public he's retiring, and then he fought Joshua Boatsy. Joshua Boatsy took 2 other fights before he fought me. He said he was going to fight me after Hutchinson, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, nobody knew this fight was going to happen. He's fighting Smith. So no one can say that these fights haven't happened because of me. I've shown my character, and I'm getting annoyed by people doubting my character. I fought Beterbiev when he was undefeated, all knockouts. No one questioned my character in terms of who I'm willing to fight. I went to Russia to fight Kovalev. These guys are more dangerous than Joshua Boatsy. So my character is, if there's an opportunity and there's a big fight, I'm going for it. Joshua Boatsy, to me, yes, it's a great fight. And not only that as well, in my opinion, it's a less risk fight and a massive fight in Britain. So of course I wanted that fight. And we spoke personally, tried to make that fight. Our teams, people started talking and trying to make things happen. He went another route. So I don't want to talk about Joshua Boatsy right now. When the fight, after I've beat Lyndon Offer, then yeah, we can, stir up the pot again. But again, I'm getting frustrated because I feel like his name being so mentioned, it's always linked to my name.
Yeah.
And if he's not going to fight me, get out of it. Get out of it.
I get it.
You know what I'm saying?
Look, I like Anthony a lot, and you take credit for good performances, but I think you take more credit for winning fights. And it's one thing putting on good performances against monsters in their division, right? In terms of Beterbiev, you go into that, you put a good performance on, you get beat, everyone goes, it's a good performance, right? It's another thing being prepared to take 50-50 fights with people that are potentially on a par with you. And with due respect to Anthony, and we had that conversation, and he stayed on the line, didn't he? And listened to me say, I'm still listening. I was there with Ben Shalom when they were trying to make the Boatsy fight. So I know that Boatsy wanted to fight. And I did an interview with Callum Smith on Up Front, and I know that Callum Smith absolutely categorically didn't say he was going to retire. He said he wanted to make sure there were challenging fights for him. And if there wasn't challenging fights for him, then possibly what would be the point? But when you look at Anthony Yarde now, and again, I make the point very clearly, I really like him as a fella and I like him as a fighter. The Boatsy Callum Smith conversation, do you pick Yarde to beat either one of those or both?
Yes.
Both. You do.
Yeah.
Irrespective of the performance you saw, the class that you saw from Callum Smith.
I think once the challenge is in front of him, it's a different Anthony Yarde. He now has the experience as well, having fought Beterbiev and Kovalev. I think both of those fights are great. And when I say yes, I pick him, I mean he can beat them.
Did you always pick? Did you always think that when the Yarde-Boatsy matchup was being mooted, who was your pick before you saw Boatsy lose to Callum Smith? Boatsy.
Yeah.
Right. So now Callum Smith beats Boatsy, and now you're suggesting that Yarde can beat Callum Smith.
Styles.
Irrespective of Boatsy was...
Styles, punch power. Styles and punch power. I think it's very close. That triumphant triangle fighters, it's very, very close. But I would give Yarde a chance against any of those guys.
Yeah.
Any of those guys.
I agree.
Do you?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think Anthony Yarde, he's come back off those losses and he's come back better and stronger. And he's the guy that, forget that below par performance, I think there's still a lot of fight left in Anthony Yarde, whereas Joshua Boatsy's not looked good, particularly for the last couple of years. He was that kid that was emerging.
He was good against Willie Hutchinson.
Yeah, no, he was. But what I'm saying is, Yarde would start possibly favourite against.
I think Yarde would beat all those guys.
Callum
as well.
Smith's
Aziz,
performance against
Hutchinson,
Boatsy, that was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm never going to go against Callum again.
Never, me neither.
Because I looked at that fight and felt that perhaps that Josh Boatsy was they're comfortable going into that fight for a reason that they wouldn't risk Josh Boaxi's career if they didn't think they could deal with it. But Callum Smith, the only time Callum Smith has really been battered around a ring is by Beterbiev. And Beterbiev is on a different level to Anthony Yarde. And Callum Smith is a world-class operator.
I hate doing this, but I thought
think he's
Yarde
clever.
performed better against Beterbiev than Callum Smith did.
Did you?
Again, it's styles.
Yeah.
But I thought Yarde performed better.
I totally agree with that. And I think that the fight that needs to be made out of that little
All of a sudden,
circle
it's
of
Callum
fighters,
Smith versus Yarde.
versus Anthony Yarde. That's a great fight.
So
to make.
Boaxi Yarde is gone
that's
now.
a great
I think
fight.
so too.
That's the
I think
fight.
so too. I hope, listen, at the end of the day, there has to be something in it from both. And I think Callum wants to fight for a world title. And if somehow or another there's an engineered opportunity for that to be the case, otherwise it looks like another audition for Callum when he's already won world titles. He's already beaten the number one in one of the divisions. Why shouldn't he be getting a shot at a title?
I think
rather than having to go for another fight with Anthony Yarde, which is a difficult one with just a little bit of cash on the end of it rather than a belt. And Callum's made a lot of money out of boxing. He doesn't need to do it for money, does he?
Yeah.
I think the interim title may warrant that, though. Like, there is something on the line.
I want to move on to the last part of the light heavyweight conversation, which is Ben Whittaker versus Liam Cameron. Spoke to Liam earlier on in the week, where he feels very relaxed about the fight with Ben Whittaker, arguing about the idea that it's a 12-round fight and somehow that Ben Whittaker's camp wanted a 10-round fight and suddenly realised they've signed to a 12. Ben Whittaker has eventually come to the fore now again. I didn't like the press. I like Ben a lot. I think he's a brilliant addition to the boxing world. I think he's stylistically fantastic to watch. But a lot of questions were asked of him in that fight, legitimate questions. They weren't answered during the fight. They weren't answered after the fight as a result of potentially people thinking that maybe he didn't fancy it. And sitting at a presser eating your lunch and trying to be arsehole clever, don't cut it with me. Where are you on this fight and what's likely to happen as a result of it? Because you fancy Liam Cameron, don't you?
Well, Liam, just listen, look, that thing that we've just heard that's just emerged about the 12-round contract being sent over and now Ben Shalom and Ben Whittaker wanting that 10-round one, of course I understand that because the fight was starting to turn around and turning around massively for Liam Cameron. And the situation happened. Only Ben Whittaker knows, the truth about that, and we're going to find that out if he's got to deal with those demons or not. Going back into that one, was he just a way out?
Not what I asked, Spence. You think Liam Cameron's going to win this fight?
I do, yeah. I just think that Liam Cameron, and he's winning the build-up, by the way, as well.
Is he?
Well, absolutely. They're now asking for a 10-round fight. Well, we know why that is, because 12 rounds is going to suit Liam Cameron much more. Like, I think that you can't say that Liam Cameron's not going to start the favourite in this one, going off that last performance.
You're right. He was winning the fight, but I think Ben wins this.
So do I.
I think Ben wins this. I think the Andy Lee link-up's a good one as well. I think Andy Lee could maybe unlock something. Ben tried to, for some reason, almost go back to just being an orthodox boxer and an upright boxer. I'm like, do what got you to where you got to.
You can't.
Do what got, why?
He can't do that because he wasn't allowed to do that. That's the understanding. So that showboating and that clowning, but if you look at the fight again, Liam Cameron was walking him down. He wouldn't allow him to do it. He was using his physicalities to do that. Ben hadn't been in with a fighter of that level before.
You've done 180 degrees on Ben Whittaker. By the way,
have you? All of a sudden,
fighters.
You turned around.
But with
was a
respect,
massive-
Spence,
And you're off the bandwagon now. You're off the bandwagon.
he is, yeah. But Spence,
No, I'm not.
I understand your argument that he didn't allow him to do it. I don't suppose Roberto Duran allowed Sugar Ray Leonard to do what he did to him in that fight. It was just a case of he couldn't deal with it. So is it a case of he wasn't allowed not to do something, he just didn't do it because he didn't turn up in that particular fight, and Ben Whittaker, the real version of Ben Whittaker, will re-emerge again in the second fight?
We'll find that out.
Right, which you don't think is going to happen.
Well, we'll find that out.
But do you think it's going to happen?
But you don't think it's going to happen, do you?
No, I think that Liam Cameron will actually win the fight. I don't think he'll be allowed to do it, no.
Yeah, okay. Right, so, you don't what you don't want is Spencer as a witness for the defence, right? Because he can change his mind in a New York minute.
Clearly changed.
Listen, I'm not going to say.
No,
I won't, mate. I won't.
What do you want to see from Ben in this fight?
Ben being Ben. Forget the noise. Forget that you can't fight this way. You forget this way. Just box.
Yeah.
Ben's a better boxer than Liam Cameron.
He is.
He's a better boxer than Liam Cameron. And I think if he boxes to his true ability, which I think is massive, I really do think he could be that superstar we've been craving over here, then I think Ben will win this comfortably.
What happens if he gets drawn into a fight?
Then he has to fight.
Then
he has to fight.
And then who wins?
Ben. Then he has to fight.
Because if he's going to do anything in this division, there's a few light heavyweights out there that are going to draw him into fights, and he's going to have to bite down at some point.
One thing that's interesting about Ben, and it's the Chris Eubank thing as well, does he have the punch power? Because that I didn't see. That's one thing I didn't see. Does he have the punch power?
Well, and Liam Cameron certainly doesn't think he's got the punch power because he made no bones about the fact that he didn't think anything
Friendly
of it.
bet for charity?
No, I wouldn't
Friendly
bet
for
because
charity?
I think that there's a lot of unanswered questions, and if Ben's what we think, and we've always
Well,
been
you
a
just
fan
don't
of
think
him.
he is now.
you don't
but I'm
think
saying-
he's that guy?
Mind up.
Is he that guy or is he not that guy?
But there's an if, isn't there? What I'm saying is, and we will find that out in this fight, because you can't go off one performance and say, oh, that he's
You
not
just did.
that. No, I said, no, I didn't. I was answering the question
Am I
saying,
losing- am I
I
losing
don't
something?
think he can.
Right,
There's a difference. There's a difference.
See that don't think is very offensive, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if's a big one as
Big,
well.
big margins, like a motorway gap in the argument.
And if is as well. And you go, but if he boxes,
If he does this,
if is a huge.
But what
one.
it is, it's an intriguing story.
Absolutely.
And we'll see. Okay, back into the heavyweight division again. We've got live boxing this weekend in Manchester. We've got Joe Joyce and Filip Hrgović. This is a dangerous fight for Joe Joyce. This is it, isn't it? This is, for want of a better expression, this is shit or bust. If he loses this fight, I don't really see where Joe goes.
He's in it's a worrying position for Joe right now because he's not looked particularly great in his last performance. He's losing to Derek Chisora the way that he lost. He was on the floor against Chisora as well. He's always been known for that durability, and you just start asking yourself questions.
Who goes in as favourite?
I think Hrgović.
Hrgović
Goes in as a big favourite, I think, going into this one. It's a make or break fight for Joe Joyce for sure.
What did we learn about Hrgović in the fight? Because obviously with Hrgovic's fight against Daniel Dubois, what we got was a lecture from him about how he was going to school Daniel Dubois.
Yeah.
And there were points in the fight where he was doing that.
Yeah.
And, you know, Daniel Dubois took a lot of shots and showed something that people debated whether he had, and came back and stuck it on Hrgović and got the outcome which he richly deserved. Where does it put, I mean, before I ask where it puts Hrgović, what has Joe got to do in this fight? I mean, we've seen gaping deficiencies in Joe, with all due respect. It starts with the Zhang fight, where he perhaps believed his own hype about taking shots and that people couldn't hurt him. And from that point, it seems to have gone, with due respect to Joe, from bad to worse.
It's got really bad.
You know, losing to Zhang, then picking to rematch against Zhang, which everyone went, no, don't do that, Joe. Think about it. And then on and on. And obviously we've seen a couple of victories in amongst it, but they've been lesser on. Cash Ali was someone he should have beaten, right? Yeah. But then we've seen the outcome against, with due respect, Derek. So Joe is at a situation now where I don't know what Joe does, because I don't think technically Joe's going to get any better. I don't think he's going to get any quicker.
You nailed it, that Joe can't adapt, and that's the point. What you see is what you get, and I think that we get a lesser version now of what we got before, where he used his brute strength and his work rate and just to wear fighters down. Now, when he's getting hit back with those shots, we're seeing the effects of that, where a fighter gets to that stage in his career where the punch resistance starts to go. And if you do that, and that's all that Joe was relying on, that was his main asset and his main strength, is in big trouble. Hrgović, like you say, the performance he put in against Dubois, where he did have his moments against Dubois, but one thing he showed us was he's got balls as well, and he can stay in there and he can take a shot.
We know he can.
And he can take a shot. That's a big problem for Joe Joyce.
If Hrgović wins, which I think he will, and I hope he doesn't, and I hope I'm wrong, this puts Hrgović back right in the main slot again of being up there with the big names, isn't it?
Yeah, and he shouldn't have really come off the main slot. He only lost once, and that was to Dubois. And he shouldn't have gone that far down, especially now. Look, I mean,
But people thought he got beat against Zhang, and they thought he got lucky in that one, didn't they?
Yeah, but his stock's almost risen because of what Dubois has done.
Yeah.
So he's almost just sat back, feet up, thinking, okay, well, you try and fight him. And everyone that's tried to fight Dubois had a problem. So look, I think he's just stylistically a very bad matchup for Joe Joyce. Joe will look at the Dubois performance, but Joe can't do the things that Dubois can do, which is fast hands and fast feet. He hasn't got neither of those, and at 39, you're not just going to get those.
No, he hasn't got them. He's not going to get them.
He seems to struggle with what weight he wants to be. Against Zhang, he really put on the size, and he's tried to come in a little leaner. And it almost looks like an egg that's just been cracked and you can't put it back together. Yeah. Before, he was able to take those shots and walk forward. As you say, he can't take those shots and walk forward. And even against Cash Ali, who's not a big puncher at all, there were moments, and even in that fight, and Chisora put him down. So I like Joe. I think Joe's been fantastic to watch. I mean, there were times where we were talking about Joe versus Wilder.
Yeah.
Could he? But it's done now, unless he can pull something out of the bag against Hrgović.
Well,
and look, we don't know where Hrgović is. Hrgović has vanished.
We can hope.
The last 5
we can
months.
hope. But Hrgović, I think, will show some gumption by the very nature of the fact that he needs to. I wanted to ask you about Akoli and Riekpo. I mean, obviously, we should have been seeing them Saturday night, but Lawrence had to pull out. I mean, I've had my little debate about Lawrence being the #1 WBC heavyweight on the back of one round in the heavyweights and a bridgerweight win. Where are you with these two fighters in the heavyweight division? What do you expect to see from them?
I think Lawrence is going to do some good stuff. I think he's going to surprise people. Lawrence was killing himself to make cruiserweight, and I mean that. And you know that because he's now 250, 260 pounds. He's almost like he's ballooned up, and it isn't just fat. There's a lot of muscle there. I think Riakpor's almost stuck in between divisions. He's not big enough for heavyweight. And the bridgerweight division is nonsense. I want it scrapped. It's rubbish.
I agree.
And I don't know if he can make cruiserweight again, Riakpor, but the cruiserweight division is actually an exciting one. There are some really good domestic fights, and there's a guy in Australia called Yarde who no one wants to fight. So there's some good fights out there for him. He's just a bit undersized in the land of the giants for heavyweights. I did the face-off between them. Obviously, they're not going to fight. And the size difference was so apparent between these two. And I said to Lawrence, look, what would have happened at cruiserweight? He's like, to be fair, I don't know. At heavyweight, though, I'm just too big for him. He's just a bit too small, Riakpor.
We've also got on Saturday night, we've got David Adeleye versus Jeamie TKV, which we saw in the studio break out earlier on, a little bit of argy-bargy and an entourage of 14 people apparently didn't keep them apart and some challenges in the foyer. This is a big fight for David Adeleye. I mean, I've grown to like him as a fella, and I was impressed with his last performance. I think he got what he deserved against Fabio Wardley. And I think his behaviour afterwards was poor, and I think he's probably grown from that defeat and from that behaviour. But this notwithstanding, it's still a difficult fight for a minute.
Big time. Jeamie TKV is one of those guys that if you listen to people about sparring, he's like the guy that just is a great sparrer but doesn't bring it to the fight. Always comes in a bit overweight, and he'll say this. I saw him, as you say, come out the studio.
Lost a lot of weight.
You lost a lot of weight.
Yeah.
So he's taking
Which
this
is what
seriously.
David was saying to him,
British title fight as well. And the implications for both of these guys are massive. The winner could fight Fraser Clark. The winner could go on and maybe have a good fight against Johnny Fisher or Dave Allen. There's a lot riding on this one. Adeleye is now with Adam Booth, who's always been that guy to give everyone a bit of confidence, right? So I make Adeleye favourite, but if Jeamie TKV can turn up and get past the first 4 or 5 rounds, which are going to be difficult, then he could turn this on his head.
I think that's exactly what he was saying upstairs when the two were having that face-off. Jeamie TKV saying to him, David, let's see what you like after 3 rounds. Because David's one of those explosive guys. He's very muscly and he does go straight for it. So he's not always thinking about that 12-round fight. Adeleye starts the favourite. I think he starts an overwhelming favourite, if I'm totally honest, when you're looking at it. But Jeamie TKV seems, he's in great shape. He's working with Barry Smith himself now, so they're over there, in that gym. They've got the heavyweight sparring around there. So, look, both guys are going into... The British heavyweight title is such a prestigious title that they'll both leave it all in the ring.
I thought Jeamie handled himself really well in the studio because me being me, the first thing that comes out of my mouth is I think David Adeleye is going to win.
Is that what you said?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Straight away.
And Jeamie was quite dignified and he was basically saying to David, you're just a bully. You're trying to bully me and you can't bully me.
Yeah.
Because David was giving it the big one, I'm going to crack your skull, I'm going to do this, that and the other and all that sort of stuff. Look, it'll be a good fight and it'll be an interesting fight. I'm going to pick Adeleye, but I think it will be a good fight and it'll be worth the watch. That's it for episode 114 of Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan Spencer. Thank you, Ade.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week.